7:10 now on News Talk 96.5 KPEL. Welcome into Wingin' It Wednesday. Ms. Carol Ross on the hot seat. Good morning.
Good morning.
So good to see you. You know what the best part about Carol is? She has her own key to get in the door. So we didn't even have to get up today.
That's right.
She's official.
Yeah, but not for the outside door. Thank
You're right.
God. Bernie
You're right.
was walking by. She let me know.
Yeah, that is true. I forgot I was
These
walking
don't work.
by.
These don't work on that outside door.
Well, you're semi-official. Let's see how today goes. Maybe we'll get you another
And
key.
she always brings her own headphones, so that's pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
And usually
know?
Oreos, too. Usually she's
Yeah.
armed with
They're
Oreos.
back in the office.
Yes.
Only the thins. I don't like the regular ones. Too much of that white stuff. Ugh.
Ugh. So you're not a fan, I
like the
guess, of
chocolate
the
stuff.
mega stuff.
Not, oh
Three
my.
times.
Those are awful.
That's too much.
Those
for
are
me.
just appalling.
Too much to me. So we are now. I was just like flipped over to see if we had any Trump tweetage this morning about the compromise. We don't. So far, the only tweet from the president this morning, the Senate Intelligence Committee, there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. All right, so that came out
That's bound
yesterday.
to drive the Democrats crazy.
Well, so it was so
they're going to
weird.
go right off the edge. If you think
have-
2016 was bad,
Yes.
this is going to be horrible.
You had the majority leader and then the highest ranking minority. Okay. They're at complete odds over the report from the same committee. How is it even possible? Doesn't everyone have to sign off on this, at least behind closed doors?
Politics.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
nobody's going to want to give a bit of ground on this. They're too dug in on both sides. But, I mean, it's become increasingly clear, especially as the information has come out. And I will give this to Trump. I think he's played his cards right on this. He sort of let this whole thing stew for a long, long time. And a lot of the information has been leaking out. It should have come out sooner. I think a lot of people were frustrated that he didn't release some of the classified information that they've had for quite a while, that they've known. They've just let it trickle out, and they've let it sink in that this whole thing really was a witch hunt from the beginning because of the fact that Bruce Orr, when he testified way back when, he told them that this was unverified. I mean, he was their guy, and he told them, we know it's unverified, and his wife worked for the firm who put together this
Because
phony
it was
thing.
opposition research.
That's
You know?
all it was. It was
Right.
paid by the opposition. But to use those FISA warrants, and I wonder when those judges are going to come out and really lay it on the line, because they were flat out lied to.
Yesterday, Rush brought up the point, which I hadn't quite thought of, which is why would the Democrats, okay, if this is opposition research, why would they have ever made public the stuff that they could use in 2020? Would they have kept some of that stuff under wraps because now we're up against another election that they would use it then?
Well, as long as Hillary's not involved, they don't need it. I mean, it was her dossier. She funded it. Her campaign funded it. The Democratic National Committee, which is now under different management, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was in charge back then. They gamed the whole thing for Hillary. You know, the superdelegates they had all lined up, you know. So Bernie Sanders, you know, he really doesn't have anything to gripe about. He is a socialist. He's not a Democrat. Why would he think that the Democrats would do anything to help him?
Yeah. So that's a good point. Where do you think we stand on this negotiation? What are we, 2 days away from a quarter of the government apparently going unfunded? It seemed like the president, we know what Wall Street did yesterday after what he said. I kind of didn't think it was one way or another because he left the
It wasn't.
option open, but Wall Street loves it.
But Wall Street loved it because Trump was equivocating again. He wasn't really saying, but I think he left the door open. And I think, I tell you the truth, in a way he's in a box, but in a way he's not. His base is going to like the fact that there's no DACA or TPS, you know, involved in this. They're going to like the fact, I do like the fact that he still retains the ability to move funds around. They still let him retain that ability, even though he's getting less money up front for specifically border barrier. Now, whether it's slats or whatever it is, and I think that's pretty much what everybody agrees should be done, some really strong steel fencing of some type. And 1.38 billion that's not a lot. I mean,
And what is that? What is it? 44 miles, and what he wants to do is
Around-
55 or something. I mean, we're close.
yeah, well, I think he's going to get the 55 miles
Yeah.
because I think they still have enough left that they've already funded. And they're still working on securing. Some of the fencing they had before was pretty atrocious.
and that's
was nothing.
That's a lot of what the president has said in these rallies. Look, we're already doing it. We're already
Yes.
doing everything.
They're already
A lot of it has been repairs to the stuff that
to the existing stuff,
yeah.
which was no border barrier at all. Really, if you look at some of that stuff, that was nothing. I mean,
Okay.
what the 8-month-old pregnant woman just hopped over one of those barriers.
Yeah, gosh.
You know, I mean, it really wasn't
Sauntered
much
on
of a
through.
barrier. But the fact is, on this, I think I think look, after that last shutdown, his numbers are up to 52%. Because he did satisfy, I think, the need of his base. At this point in time, I don't think there's a percentage in it for him to still remain hardcore and shut it down again. I think that's where you're going to see fatigue on both sides.
Because you see we've gone from not $1 to what 1.72
right. And I wonder
billion?
how Nancy Pelosi is going to handle this, because I mean, she was like, what
Not
if I open the government, Nancy? What would you do? I'm not giving you any money. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
Okay, the one thing I hate, well, okay, not one thing. Of the things I hate about politics, the one
of
that
the
I
many
think,
things that you hate about politics.
the one thing I think is the most glaring is when old ideas are recycled and they are credited to the most recent person to suggest it. And I'm talking about Ted Cruz making this hard stance that El Chapo should pay for the section of the wall. Our very own Bill Cassidy has talked about this for years. This is nothing new.
Bill Cassidy actually brought it up in the last, I don't know about years, but this first came up in 2017. This was first proposed in 2017, and I believe it was Cruz's proposal. I think it was his bill. It kind of went dormant. Now with El Chapo being convicted, it's back up again. They're estimating that he has about $14 billion in assets, but you know where it is?
Where?
In Mexico.
Yeah.
Right
It's in
there.
Mexico.
Yeah, how are you going to get that?
That's a good question,
Chase
because the
Quickpay.
Mexican government is not in favor of any kind of barrier. Why? Because a good chunk of their economy comes from repatriated money coming from the United States. Why the hell would they want a border
Why would they
in
want to do it?
in any way, shape, or form?
But and why are they not the one? Because I just have to laugh. You know, kudos to the prosecutors who were able to get everything they needed to convict El Chapo.
Yeah.
But why is it us? Why are we the ones doing it? Why isn't Mexico taking care of their own drug war?
Because Mexico is fundamentally a failed country, and it's just not apparent yet. And with this new guy, he's not even giving lip service to keeping a lid on the drug cartels.
Yeah.
And then we find out the last guy may have profited
There
very
are some
handsomely.
stories that he was
Well,
bribed.
it came out at the trial that very likely the government in Mexico, look, the drug cartels are so powerful, they're so wealthy, and they are ruthless. And their phrase is, you take the silver or you eat the lead. And so who in their right mind in Mexico, the people down there don't feel like they have the power that we have going through the courts, et cetera, because they feel the courts are corrupt as well.
Yeah.
Not to mention, well, I mean, I think we're getting to that point when you look at what's going on right now in this country.
Are either one of you concerned about the Canadian border now? My only thought about this is it's sort of like we're putting all of our focus where, yes, we know the majority of it does come from, okay? But then you have a similar situation where it may not be people from Central America, but are there terrorists? Are there other things coming through Canada?
Well,
Because
do we have more confidence in the Canadian government?
We probably do.
That's
Yeah,
exactly right. They
yeah.
are not a failed country. I mean, they still have functioning
Good distinction. Yeah.
judicial processes, the law enforcement processes. I think I have more confidence that Canada will be able to find out these things. I'm really worried about Mexico. I will be honest with you, because we have that right on our southern border, and they're not. They give lip service to some things, but they don't really do anything to help us control the illegal immigration, because it's not in their best interest.
To do so.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Carol Ross is in the hot seat. I do want to take a second, though, to clarify. I think some people thought last week when Stafford was on that we blew out Wingin' It Wednesday and it was going to be Stafford every week for an hour. No, it's not what we're doing. We're trying a little bit of a hot seat format where we can really dive into these issues hard and not worry so much about making sure everyone has equal time, but really just getting into the issues.
And some conversation.
And we'll, of course, take your phone calls at 232-1542 as well. So,
all right. I want to talk about Sherry's Berries. Because
tomorrow.
It is.
Tomorrow's
Yum.
D-Day.
Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. Yeah, right? I mean, okay, so how does it work? Sherry's Berries, delicious giant strawberries dipped in chocolate. They have milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate. They've got chocolate chips.
Stop yourself.
They've
Haven't
got
eaten breakfast
sprinkles.
Stop.
Just stop talking about it. They're good.
We're both melting down here.
Right? So you should go to berries.com and order some. It's BERRIES.com and order your berries. $19.99 plus shipping and handling. But because you know me, there's also a code that I have that leads to more.
Should have known.
A great discount. So Up in the right-hand corner at berries.com, there's a microphone. When you click on the microphone, then you can enter the code Bernie19, and for $19.99 more, you're going to get a dozen red roses. So your sweetheart gets delicious chocolate-covered strawberries and beautiful roses, and you are not sleeping in the doghouse.
Do it, guys. Do it.
Berries.com, BERRIES.com.
They are fabulous.
Right?
They really are.
They're delicious.
I've had some sent to me. Yes, and they
Click the
are.
microphone in the upper right-hand corner and type
Bernie
in Bernie
19. That's my code.
Coming up on Wingin' It Wednesday, National Lampoon's $100,000 trip to Israel. We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back to Wingin' It Wednesday with Carol Ross here on the hot seat. We were just talking about President Trump and how he loves to brand people. You know, just whether it's with a nickname or whether it's, you know, for a while it was Lion Ted. And
Pocahontas.
then there's
Pocahontas.
and I mean, you know, I think
Little
sometimes
Marco.
Little Marco. Yeah, all of those.
What was Jeb?
Was Jeb
Low energy. Low
something
energy
low
Jeb.
energy
Something like that.
You know, it's all over the place. So I want to talk about the trip to Israel that our governor took. Now, I will probably get a lot of angry phone calls, and I'm happy to take them at 232-1542.
Okay.
But in a week where we have had a member of Congress being called on to step down because of her comments on Israel and anti-Semitic remarks, at least we have a Democrat who's acknowledging Israel's importance to us in the world or as an ally. So is it worth it, Carol?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Was it just a little sentimental journey for him and the state police and a few others? Or was it a real economic development trip? We're having a hard enough time getting American companies to invest in Louisiana because of our negative policies. Do you think the Israelis are going to be that stupid? I don't know. What really worries me is that we have a great productive workforce. We have kids getting a great education in our universities and then having to go somewhere else to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? Well, then grandma and grandpa, because when they go far away and they get married and have kids, grandma and grandpa are going to leave and follow the kids.
For the kids, yeah.
You know, so this is not a good thing. And Moon has said this before. Are we going to lose another congressman because of losing population? We don't know. We'll find out with the census.
With the census, yeah.
But it really is a troubling thing. I mean, I'm not fond of this governor, as many know.
No way.
I'm not fond of John Bell, you know. I mean, I think his policies are so negative. I think he has unleashed the dogs of of lawsuits on the whole economy. And you see it in the advertising. If they weren't feeling confident about being successful filing lawsuits in this state, they wouldn't be advertising to beat the band. Am I happy for the radio and TV and stations? Yes, I'm very happy that they're spreading those dollars around. But I want to tell you, it's a troubling aspect of our economy in Louisiana that lawsuits have deterred a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard about the companies that have they've come in and they've looked at our lawsuit environment. They've turned. We're a judicial hellhole. You can look at all the people can decry that, but it's there. It's not something you can overcome easily.
Well, so I guess the $1 million question then becomes, okay, so let's just say these companies all decide we're not coming there anymore. We know that the job market is still what it is in our area, yet we hear from Greg Gotro this morning the good news about sales tax revenues.
Yes.
So
But
that is probably
remember,
the clearest sign of diversification, I would say, right?
Well, we have listen, as you know, I was very involved in a project called Vision Lafayette back in the 80s when we were on our butts. Yeah, I mean, seriously. We have done a lot of diversification. We have really done great things with our cultural economy. We've done great things with education. Healthcare is an amazing sector in Lafayette. And remember that we are drawing on a huge trade area, a very large statistical trade area. So we're fortunate in that. And so far, with a lot of the smaller outlying municipalities, they keep raising their sales taxes. So far, we've managed to keep somewhat of a level playing field in Lafayette, in the city of Lafayette. We haven't gone as far as some of those areas where they brought in the big box stores, but in order to do it, they had to put a TIF in, which means they're collecting an extra penny or two. I've had people from Karen Crow email me and say, we're paying 10.45 in that one TIF district but of course, then
Super One and everything, right?
Right. There's
that
always a
area.
trade-off. There's always a trade with a TIF. You're taking a chance but at least you're going to get some money back.
Hmm.
Pilots, on the other hand, you don't want to do a pilot. That's giving away the money up front before you even know what you're going to get. And so a lot of times when they put in a TIF to get a business here, same thing with the ITEP, the Industrial Tax Exemption
Hmm.
Program,
Hmm.
it's a chance you're taking. You have to look at what's your return on investment. For instance, you wouldn't give away the money up front to that town center development. I wouldn't. And even our tax assessor got up, and even some area mayors got up and spoke against it because it's a giveaway up front. But with a TIF, you're at least have the prospect of getting something back on the back end when you sell something and that
Yeah.
extra penny is coming in.
My biggest fear always with those, especially with the money on the front end, is it makes it so much easier to just decide, this isn't working for us.
Well,
You know, if you
what did
don't
we
have
get
that
for that?
much
We're
of
supposed to what were we promised? A road all the way through to Vero School Road. Do you remember those promises?
Yeah.
was that going
We
to go like
can't
on the
even get
backside?
yeah,
Really?
all the
Wow.
way through behind Lourdes and all the way to Vero School Road. We can't even get half of that road open yet.
Yeah.
I hear various reasons why. Uh,
It stops right there behind Costco at that corner.
that's
You're
right.
totally right.
That's
Wow.
right. So it doesn't go all the way through, and part of the fact is that the rest of the development hasn't been done as promised, as it was anticipated. I think because of lawsuits on that piece of property.
Yeah.
So but on the industrial tax exemption program, I would say watch out for people who are trying to do away with that completely. As long as we have the terrible tax structure that we have in Louisiana, for some parishes and municipalities, that is the only way to attract
Mhm.
major businesses. And if you look at what just happened with Exxon, now they're not going to do their expansion over in East Baton Rouge or in the Baton Rouge area. Now they're going to Beaumont, something like that, because they were denied that industrial tax exemption. And that's another thing the governor did without much debate, without much
And that
back
was
and
a
forth.
Together Baton Rouge, right? Or was it
That's
Together
together.
Louise?
Baton Rouge was fighting it, but and that's a very liberal left wing group. They're not fond of corporations in any way, shape, or form. But these people provide jobs, and this is what people need. I will tell you, there are tax exemptions and there are tax exemptions. I'll give you an example: stellar setting. But first, let me finish with the governor. Putting that in where any entity, any local entity, could short circuit any of these
Hmm.
is really kind of unfair to every local entity, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can stop that, and these are jobs that come in. Now, people will say, well, why should they get the tax exemption and small mom and pop don't? You look at a place like Stuller that requested a 16,000 a year for 10 years, right? Stuller has been here for 30 years, however many, employing thousands. I mean, at least 1,200.
Huge employer in our
Yeah,
area.
huge
Yes.
employer.
Yep.
They make very good money. They spend money with the mom and pops, with the small businesses. They buy homes, they buy clothing, they buy, all sorts of things. And so that ripple effect can be felt. A you want to have a little bit of flexibility so that a place like Stellar, which, has been doing the job,
Hmm.
you know, doesn't get short circuited when they ask for just a slight break. I'm telling you, the property taxes in Lafayette Parish, they're, the big employers and the big property owners are paying hefty
Well, I mean, just
amounts.
look at the amount of property that Stellar sits on, too.
You're talking some of the major employers, the property own and the property management companies like MPW, one of my sponsors, BO companies, Stellar, Frank's Casing Crew. You talk about some of the big companies here; they are paying huge amounts.
Yeah.
And if you look at the actual breakdown of who's paying what, well, businesses are paying about 66%, about two-thirds of all the property taxes being paid in Lafayette Parish, maybe more, being paid by businesses, commercial entities.
It is pretty funny that right in front of Stellar, like on their doorstep, is that terrible road project. Like the road to Stellar is still unpaved.
Vero
You
School.
know, I
Well, I
mean,
think it's pretty. That intersection has just has
Oh,
opened.
okay.
That's open. There are still sections that aren't. It's like the road that took forever to build.
Well, we kept hearing because we would ask questions. Okay, people, that was such a pain point. Now it's kind of moved over to E. Broussard, Kali Saloon, which that is something. At least you're starting to see something when you're sitting in traffic at 5 o'clock. At least you can watch the construction happening. But we would get calls about Vero School because you wouldn't see anything happening, and the answer we would get was, "You guys have no idea the amount of drainage that is just south in that neighborhood. It's the drainage works being done." And we're still seeing some things sit there. So
Well, I think it takes way too long to build any projects in Louisiana,
just a lot of people involved.
and then they have to keep
Yeah.
being repaired. So you have to question who's in charge, who's looking out for the taxpayers' money, Who's holding their feet to the fire? The contractors, et cetera, the engineers. I'd like to see more of an ombudsman position in our Department of Transportation, and I would not like to see all the money that goes to. I'm sorry, they're overweighted on salaries and et cetera. You look at the amount of money that's going to anything but the roads, and you wonder why people don't want to give them any more money, because we don't see the money that's going there now going to what we want.
Yeah. All right, quick break here. 7:34 now at Newstalk 96.5 KPEL.
Hilarious. That's
Sorry.
what you are.
Sorry to cut you off.
That's
there.
okay. That was hilarious.
Don't take offense.
I love that you love me.
Don't take offense. All right, so we're getting some of your calls and some of your emails in as well. The number is 232-1542. I want to go back to the border debate because it's crazy. I sit back and I think, what's the difference, okay? With now that we have social media and we have 24-hour coverage of this, it's almost like to stay near the surface of the water, you have to be making these statements all day long and staying top of mind. I even think about it with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In the situation where, you know what, I'll tell her, one of the things corporate campaign finance, if she actually has some decent points in that. But stick to that, where honestly you have people on both sides saying, we kind of understand what you're saying about just corporate spending, et cetera. But then you do something like the Green New Deal, which it looks like they're going to push to a vote just so that these Democrats have to give it an up or down.
Mitch McConnell he's pulling a good parliamentary move there.
I mean, put your money where your mouth is.
Because so many of them are running for president. So it's a great move.
Yes, so many.
Now we're going to see, and they're giving it lip service. But now let's see when the rubber meets the road, and you have to actually cast a vote on this.
And it's not
which
like
way
Louisiana
you going to go?
You can change your vote.
Yeah,
can't do that.
Right.
Can't do that. So what do you make of it? I mean, obviously this has to stay top of mind. I'm just reading back. I went through the Trump Twitter digest 10 hours ago. I want to thank all Republicans for the work you've done dealing with the radical left on border security. Not an easy task, but the wall's being built and will be a great achievement and contributor toward life and safety within our country.
Yeah, I think pretty much right now his base is thinking, there's not much else to be done. Let's go with this. Let's see where he can find other pockets of money. After all, I mean, he does have the National Act that was passed back in National Emergencies Act or something like that. It was passed back in 1976, I believe, and it gave the president pretty much leeway, and it also stipulated that Congress didn't have anything to say about it. It was part of the president. Of course, we've seen how that has gone with Trump. It has not mattered that what the law says about the executive power that he has to exercise.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what he's exercised. The courts are always going to go after him, which brings up a really good point, because if we have people who elect representatives who vote the way their constituents want them to vote, who express the will of the people, if we are a government of, by, and for the people, and yet every time something like that happens, the court steps in and says, we have a better idea. We don't think you should do that, and it's up to us. Why even have a legislative or an executive branch if the court is going to come in every damn time and tell you what you have to do or what you can't do?
Greatest deliberative body. That's what they do. They debate. They look at things. They look at the pros and cons. Then it seems like the court comes in and just says, well, based on law, well, you make a good point.
Based on what? Based on what law?
Yeah.
I mean, your interpretation of the law. You're not supposed to be making law. You're supposed to be interpreting it. And sometimes, depending on political bias, and do not tell me political bias doesn't enter into it.
What about this?
It does.
This thought. Okay. And this is a little bit of a stretch, but we're talking about, the Democrats being forced to kind of put their money where their mouth is on this Green New Deal. I heard a scenario yesterday where the president issues a national emergency for this money, okay? Then the House, led by Nancy Pelosi, puts up a motion, approves a motion that says, we want the Senate to vote on it. Basically, we're against it, so then it would force the Senate to vote on it. Republicans in the Senate are going to be in the same situation where they're not going to want to vote on it either, don't you think?
Well, they've already passed the National Emergencies Act in Congress. They're not doing anything.
On the specific national emergency of the border wall, on border wall funding.
But it's already passed. Why would they have to do it again?
So your contention is it already falls under the National Emergency
It's what the
Act.
Supreme Court likes to call stare decisis. It's already settled law.
Okay.
It's already been exercised multiple times, including by Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton all the way back to Jimmy Carter. It's already been exercised. There are still some national emergencies still in effect right now.
Uh-huh.
About 58 of them, I think.
So
is the
those
last.
three, because we keep
It's
Yeah,
a
there's
lot. I do
there's a
remember
bunch
that.
of
I heard
national
that.
because I
emergencies
feel
still.
like they keep talking about just the three: Iraq War, 9/11, and FDR during the Depression, where he closed all the banks. There are more than
Yeah.
those three
That
fall
aren't
under
even
that?
that aren't even real emergencies in my opinion, but somebody considered
Gotcha.
them an emergency and they got away with it, but now
Gotcha.
it's Trump.
Yeah.
And that's the
Mm-mm-mm.
whole difference. It's Trump. And so we're not going to let him have anything because, after all, he's an illegitimate president and the Russians got him in there. So there. And we're not going
Well,
to
it
go
seems-
along with anything he says, and we don't care
It seems like
whether it's
we'll
legal or not.
hopefully see the end to that, and maybe sometime soon. There are thoughts that maybe in the next couple of weeks we could hear the final findings from the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, but you hear what the Democrats are setting up right now. I
What?
mean, they're setting up a whole bunch of additional things that perhaps Mr. Mueller didn't look at. And so there are
Oh.
other things that we have to look at. Not only that,
Yeah.
the Southern District of New York, they hate Trump. They hate Trump
Yeah.
worst of all, and they're going to keep that roiled up forever.
So I listened to yesterday this new podcast that premiered. It's from ABC, and it's Kira Phillips, who is the wife of John Roberts, the Fox reporter, and it's called The Investigation. And basically, she has sought out just to talk to people and get their thoughts on it.
Mhm.
No fact check. Just what are your thoughts from your point of view? And her first interview was with Gary Cohn. It was an hour. He was the original kind of Trump legal
lawyer.
mind behind all this.
Mm-hmm.
And his contention is that he doesn't think there's even going to be a report. He thinks there's not even going to be a report because there's nothing. He says he knows everything that Mueller has and that there's nothing to even write a report on.
Well, he better write a report. He spent how many millions of dollars? I mean, he needs
And
to.
how many months? Yeah.
And that would be even worse if there's no report, because then there's no end to this.
Then it's just
The speculation
ambiguous.
continues to roll right through 2020, which would be, I wouldn't put that past Mueller and Weissman. You know the history of Andrew Weissman. You go back to Ted Stevens. What they did to Ted Stevens, what they did to Scooter Libby, they've done it over Enron, the Arthur Anderson people. It's a pattern with both of them, and they're not alone. Comey, Mueller, and this guy, Weissman. They are unbelievably political. I won't even say what they are, but they're like the dogs of war.
So it would be worse to you to get no report. than at least a
Yeah,
report
because
saying
then
we
the
didn't find
speculation
anything.
continues to roil on. It feeds the Democrat narrative, because then it gives them the power or the impetus to continue with their investigation, because after all, Mr. Mueller didn't issue his. So it's incumbent upon us.
Ooh, gosh, you're
I
just
mean,
talking
it's
about a
terrible.
whole lot of mess.
Well, it is a whole lot of mess.
232-1542. Good morning. You're on Wingin' It Wednesday with Carol Ross and Robin Burney. Go ahead.
How's everybody doing this morning?
We are
Good.
nice. It's got to be a good day today.
I have to say though, I missed the debates on Winging It Wednesday when Carol and Stafford get into it. Love it. You guys are great. Look, I would start a Kickstarter for you guys to have a show with just you guys on it. Great.
A Kickstarter. Okay. Do I get the money?
Hey, we call that advertising.
Yeah.
No, but
We do a Kickstarter
I'm
every
just-
day,
I'm
9 to
just
5.
I really do look forward to Wednesdays. But look, listen, I just want to say that being a guy in the middle and seeing all this back and forth going on between Democrats and Republicans, especially between liberals and conservatives, it's getting old.
It definitely is.
And I'm not the only one. And I have a lot of independent friends and no party friends, and everyone's getting tired of it. It's almost embarrassing a little bit.
You
But
bet.
that's all I have to say. Good job, you guys.
Thank you.
I
the
appreciate
call.
that. And he's absolutely right. I think people are ready for a pragmatic approach. To be honest with you, if it weren't for, some of the things that were said in the campaign and all that kind of stuff, what Trump is doing is actually pretty pragmatic. He's not an ideologue by any means, But he knows that there are certain things that he has to do, and that is one of them is, and he ran on this, and he got elected because
Yeah.
immigration was the wedge issue. People are tired of what's going on with the unfettered illegal immigration. We have to get a handle on it. If we don't have a country.
The interesting part is one of the biggest criticisms that I've heard of Amy Klobuchar, who announced her candidacy, was that there are a lot of the Democratic strategists. I mean, I think even some just poll watchers and election watchers that say she's not extreme enough for what that party
Isn't
wants
that
right now,
sad?
and that is sad.
Really, and I've seen other analysts say she could really take that middle ground because that's the ground that, as the gentleman said, people
Tired.
want to get things done, good things for the American people, and they're just tired of just the back and forth bickering. It's what was the guy called it? Revenge politics. That was Howard Schultz.
Yep.
He's right. I mean,
Yep.
they're tired of the revenge politics. Can we finally get something done? And that's why I think really at this point in time, I think with the fatigue going on in Washington, I think Trump is going to go along with this deal.
Do you ever see a time where we see a split ticket, a Democrat president, Republican vice president, or just because, think about it, if you have someone like Klobuchar who's willing to say, you know who I'm going to work with? I'm going to work with, I don't know, some Republican.
You know what I think is interesting? If you hear some of those younger ones that got elected, like even from California, that got elected in under questionable circumstances because of that ballot harvesting that they were doing, which was really something else. But they are from districts that went for Trump, and they're willing to compromise. I think they are willing to compromise.
I think we need to add the song "The Middle" to the Wingin' It Wednesday music rundown.
Yeah,
Carol Ross.
I mean, there's when you see Nancy Pelosi and the women in white, that's such a small group. I think most people just want to get things done for their constituents. I believe most representatives, most congressmen are that way.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who's been a real surprise, and I think he's going to be there for as long as he wants to be. Congressman Higgins. I think he has surprised a lot of people with his willingness to work across the aisle. He will not trash anybody. He does not speak ill of anybody. He has his strong beliefs, but he's willing to work with people across the aisle. I think a lot of people have been very impressed with him.
I want to say kudos as we wrap up with Carol Ross for your work on Home for the Holidays. This week was the big check
Wasn't that
presentation.
awesome?
It warms my heart as much as all that great food at Joey's.
Yeah, that warms something else.
Yes. And so you go there and you see all the work that these, when I was
and you
actually
hear the stories.
I told the story about Healing House yesterday.
The David,
about
the little boy.
David,
Oh.
who his entire family was killed in a car accident. He survived, and Healing House really came through. And, they're very humble. They won't say they're the reason. I'm going to say it right here, though. That sort of stability, when
Yes.
you focus, you deal with something that's that tragic so instantly, you need some stability from somewhere. And if it's not happening in your family, it's happening at some
And they
place
need
like
a
Healing
peer
House.
group, and they get that peer group with the
Yes.
other people who have suffered terrible, terrible loss, and they
get
realize,
him. They
Yes.
get him. They understand.
oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your
Beautiful.
work that you do. We are
Well,
thrilled
Town
to-
Square was great.
always do it.
KATC, by the way, on the show this afternoon, we are going to be talking to Jim Hummel
Oh, cool.
about his investigative work with, I have a call into the bishop,
Oh, gosh.
but I haven't heard back. But Jim is going to come on because I think it is a great story that needs to be told.
Yes.
How did they verify the names?
Yes.
Because I haven't heard anybody
I
say
know.
it wasn't true, and so I really want to give KATC, our news partners, props for the work that
And
they did.
that's one of those things, and I'll say it from experience. It takes a long time.
It does. Yeah.
A lot of times, if you have management over you who's saying, "We want a news story every day, news story every day,"
Yes.
so this took months and months.
Yes.
Jim and I have been talking about it. The other thing that I think is interesting is yesterday the Alexandria diocese, because one thing they didn't announce was the parishes they were from, the parishes where they worked. They just announced the names, and their
Yeah.
reason was because they don't want to hurt the flock of parishioners who follow these people. They've already
That's
been hurt.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
They've already been hurt, guys.
the church, my church, I'm so disappointed in my church for the way they've handled this. This is not only illegal at its very fundamental, it is immoral. It's unethical.
Yeah.
What they did to cover this up. We saw it with Gilbert Goethe. I've also tried to get in touch with Ray Mouton to talk to him about his book, which was one of the first instances when it went public with Father Gilbert Goethe.
Yep.
And remember what the church did with him. They just moved him from parish to parish. This is fundamentally, this is so tragic.
Yeah. So
And
Jim
then-
Hummel this afternoon on the Ross Report with
Yeah,
Carol Ross.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Hopefully, I'm going to have Debbie Ryan on it too. We've had a little scheduling, and Debbie is doing the Women's Chamber of Commerce,
Awesome.
the Lafayette Women's Chamber of Commerce, which I think is awesome because there's so many women-owned small businesses who don't have real representation. But she says guys can join too, so they're not being discriminatory.
See? I love it.
But I think this is a great start toward a small business chamber of commerce, and I like it.
All right. Carol Ross, thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Winging It Wednesday
Have a
each and
great
every
day,
week
everybody.
right here on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.